had dinner with a mentor and like a leader of the company at the time. And I'd said, hey, this is my last year as an account manager. I'm going to get into the top 1%. That's how I'm gonna hang my hat up, and then I'm gonna go get a people leadership job. He was like, wait a minute. First, you haven't got the people leadership job yet. Second of all, you know that goes to like the top 1% of the entire company, right? I was very sure of myself, this little kid. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And then, here we go, a year later, she happened.
So, tell us, you graduate college, throw the hat.
Woohoo.
What do you want to do next with the rest of your life?
Yes. Well, just before graduating, I got the big monkey wrench that I was going to be closing down my company and going off to work for this company called Cisco. They were going to move me to North Carolina. Had never been there, never heard of it, and didn't all the way know what I was going to be doing. I knew it was something in business, but I didn't really know much about it. I just knew I knew a ton of stuff about Cisco from past. So yeah, I don't know, a few weeks after graduation where they were like, we're shipping you out to...
So let's talk about the business a little bit.
Yeah.
What was it? What was the value proposition?
Yes.
Why did you have to close?
Yes. So the business at the time was called DC Extreme. We eventually changed the name to Alter Ego. Horrible names. But we...
Sounds like something actors get.
I know.
Like an actors conference.
Like why? But it was a dance and self-esteem camp for girls, 16 and under. And we ran these camps all over the United States.
Whilst you were...
And we,
Wow.
where the need came from, so I taught at a ton of dance studios in the Bay Area, and I danced for years. And we would take these kids to dance conventions where basically a weekend, you pay thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars. You go and you take all these classes. They're filled to the brim with kids, no space to like learn from this teacher that's on some stage. And there's kids everywhere fighting to get in the front, makeup galore, the whatever ones, whoever's like the one that has all the glitz and glam and the best dance moves typically gets called out by the teacher who's all the way on that stage, gives them the attention, and oh my gosh, now let's have you compete. They compete. They got all these trophies for pretty much being the competitive one in front, has all the glitz, the glamour, the money to be able to pay for all the competition stuff or what have you. And what I found was there was a group that was kind of left behind. If you weren't the skinniest, if you weren't the fittest, if you didn't have enough money to pay for and submit for all those competitions, if you, you didn't have like both mom and dad who can like drop everything, pay to be there and get you all the things you need. They were kind of figuring out for themselves and maybe their siblings. And part of me wanted to figure out creating experience for the underdogs that were there.
Sounds good.
And so I noticed there was a lot focused on the outside for those kids, but there wasn't a lot focused on the inside. It wasn't like classes talking about self-esteem. There wasn't anything talking about, building your confidence and stuff like that. And so our camps mirrored what you would see at a dance convention, a little bit smaller, but we also built in, at the time, the Dove campaign had a whole self-esteem curriculum. We took that curriculum, built it into our programs, and we taught the camps. Started out in just the Bay Area, then we expanded to the West Coast, and then later to East Coast.
And then you had to close because?
And then we had to close because Cisco came along, and I was like, so I should preface, I was just about to, I worked with my mentor at the time on finding a location to where instead of us traveling, we'd be based somewhere and we'd run the same programs out of the Bay Area. And I was just about to like go in on the location we were going for. And this opportunity just came up with Cisco. And I was like, I could go the safe route. Both my parents, immigrants, they were entrepreneurs. I've seen them do it. I knew exactly what that was going to be like. I would just replicate over here. Everything was the same. All my friends were going to be the same. My boyfriend at the time, all would be this, like everything was just safe.
Yeah.
And something in my gut said, if I don't take this chance, when am I going to get it again? Like if I fail at that, great. I'll come back and do the safe thing. But I'm never going to get that chance.
That's so interesting that you would say that being an entrepreneur is the safe bet and not the career job.
You know, at the time, both my parents were entrepreneurs. That's all I've seen them do.
Right.
Right. And so to me, that was like, I know how to do it. I know how to do a sole proprietorship. That's what I saw my parents do.
Right.
Now, very different than running a corporation or like leading teams of whatever people. But I saw that. That was like safe.
Yeah.
But I'd never seen working in corporate. I'd never seen what that's like.
Right.
So to me, it was different. It was a risk.
And what was the role is it a graduate program?
Yeah, it was a sales associate program. So they called it the Cisco Sales Associate Program, dubbed CSAP. There's like a community of thousands of people now out around the world, really, that have gone through these programs. And they take the top whatever percentage from colleges around the world, send them all to the same location, train them, and you either come out as a sales rep or a sales engineer.
What's the difference?
One is just more in-depth technical or more focused on a particular technology or getting a little bit more technical, and the other more focused on the business side.
Right. But then the sales engineer would be more involved in pre-sales.
Both are involved in pre-sales.
Oh, okay.
But just the engineering track was a little bit more technical, whereas the sales track was a little bit more business focused.
So which one did you do?
I actually wanted to do the engineering track, and a mentor there was like, I'm telling you, Esther, you'll be dangerous over there. Take your technical knowledge, you'd be dangerous over there. And I'm like, oh, but who does sales? Sales isn't cool. You know, I'm thinking like used car salesman, right? Like that's never been, everybody has that icky feeling when they think about sales. And my mentor was like, I'm telling you, you would be dangerous over there.
Wow.
And to this day, I'm still connected with him. He's awesome. And he knew because he was a sales rep. He made tons of money and was like, I'm telling you, with your technical knowledge, like you're acing all this stuff, you would be awesome over there. And I followed suit, and he was right.
So what's the different, just a summary, career progression? And obviously sales. So sales is all about delivering results.
Yes.
So you're a hustler, so that was never on your mind. You were good.
You know, I never thought I would be in sales, but I was already doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Right? In any profession, you're always selling. Like if any business needs to have revenue. If you don't have revenue, you don't have a business. Let's call it what it is.
Yes.
And if you have a business that has revenue, you're selling whatever it is you do for that revenue, right? But yeah, I didn't think it was going to be, I didn't think it would be easy or like, yeah, I'm definitely going to do this. I'm going to ace this. It was definitely difficult. But it was so much fun. Oh my God. So much fun.
Key.
So much fun.
You enjoyed it.
Yes. It was so much fun. It was hard. It was scary.
A lot of traveling.
Lots of traveling.
Just domestic, just US?
No, global. Well, I started out my career, so over the course of, I'll say for my individual contributor career, like I don't manage people, I'm just, I'm a seller, right? Starting out my career, 21 years old, but I made my first 6 figures at 21. And then my last year as an individual contributor sales rep, I was 30 and made my first $1 million. And throughout that period, I started out kind of like domestically focused. I was in Los Angeles, selling to like movie studios and like people that supported movie studios. Then went on to New York City, selling to banks and credit unions and, fashion industry. Then later went on to like global companies in New York. So that's when the international travel started. Then moved back to Silicon Valley and got the big kahuna Silicon Valley mass data centers. And that was like a whole nother world.
Wow.
So much fun.
So 16 years in total.
16 years.
Was there any moments in that career trajectory where you said, I've had enough of this? And also, you're still at NFL when you started, right?
Yeah, so I did 7 years in the NFL and NBA. 5 of those years was while I was at Cisco. And that was as an individual contributor. So not as a manager or a director or a senior director or any of that.
So why did you decide to stop the NFL, considering you the juggle was working, though?
It was a lot. It was working, but it was a lot. I'd come to a bit of an inflection point. Like I was end of my 7th year. I'd made captain that year. I was the first Black captain in New York Jets history at the time. So all the things I was like, oh, I wanted to accomplish, I'd done it at that point. I performed a Super Bowl to close out the year. Like, it was just great. But I knew I hadn't done all the things I wanted to on the sales side. Like, I knew, hey, look, I can't do this any longer. I want to go and start accelerating my career up the ladder, people leadership, all that kind of stuff. But there was one thing I didn't do yet and I wanted to accomplish, which was getting in the top 1% of sellers at the Fortune 64 company I was working at. That was hard. It was 20,000 sellers at this,
top 1%. Wow.
Top 1% is like the top 200 people. Full stop. Like, globally, around the world.
As your career goes, there's more employees, right? So your pool of competition is increasing every year.
Oh my gosh, right? So, but yeah, I hadn't accomplished that yet. I'd done all the things on the dance side, but I hadn't done that yet. And so I committed to myself, like.
So why were you bothered about why did you want to be? Because like you said,
yeah,
you're not like, it's not like you dreamed about being a salesperson.
I know I didn't, but I'm competitive, and my mom is like just as competitive. And she's like, if you're going to do it, don't just do it. Be like the best at it. Like, if you're going to do it, be the best, right? That's morphed over time to be the best you can be. I hear the laughing. It's terrible. But you know, that is always instilled in us, is like, if you're going to do it right, be the best at it. And I saw that and was like, that's the best.
Wow.
Like, that is the best.
So then, do you now implement your strategy, board of advisors for this particular task?
You better believe it. Everything changed. Now I didn't have 30 hours a week. I saw it as I had 30 free hours a week. Most people are like, really? Where'd you find those? But I now had 30 free hours a week. I had the same structure and discipline that I had for a whole other job. I just pivoted that in. I changed up my board of advisors. I figured out my strategy, and I'm like, this is exactly what I've got to do to get to that top 1% spot.
You're now at this pivotal point where you've made that decision. I'm going all the way in, no more NFL. So then from the time when you made that decision to when it actually becomes a reality, how many years did it take you?
I did it in a year.
What?
No. I did it in a year. That's all you get. I had 1 year left.
Really?
Yes. The next year I'd said to myself, I will be in a different role, which was a people manager position. And so I've got 1 year to make it into the top 1%. I've made it clear to it's funny, crazy story. I had dinner with a mentor and like a leader of the company at the time. And I'd said, hey, this is my last year as an account manager. I'm going to get into the top 1%. That's how I'm going to hang my hat up, and then I'm going to go get a people leadership job. He was like, wait a minute. First, you haven't got the people leadership job yet. Second of all, you know that goes to like the top 1% of the entire company, right? I was very sure of myself, this little kid. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And then here we go, a year later, she happened.
And then she happens, and what kind of bonuses, like, what does that mean for those that don't know?
Yes. So
you hit company revenue of how much what's the target?
At the time, I took what was a $13 million business and turned it to a $50 million business.
And what did you get from that?
Lots of money. That was my $1 million year.
Wow.
$1 million year. Mm-hmm.
So from a personal perspective, how do you feel about ticking that box? Not just the accomplishment, but now you actually have something tangible like, oh, wow.
Oh my God. Talk about like confidence booster. I was the most arrogant. Oh my, you couldn't tell me anything. I was so, because I mean, think about that, right? The intention, the law of attraction, just like setting that bar, working your tail off and getting it. I was so sure of myself. I was so arrogant. You couldn't tell me anything. Everybody that I told I'm going to do this, I could then show them I did it. What I didn't realize is that I used brute force and willpower. I took 30 hours that I'd had and just replaced that with more work, which earlier on in your careers, you can do that. You can get away with it. As I grew in my career, I realized that they talk about it. To get to 10x, it's much easier than 2x. It's not just doing more work. You should be really smart about the work. Back then, I was so arrogant and like, I did it. Oh, yes. But it was because I was doing a lot more work.
Right. So it was strategic, but it wasn't smart.
Yeah, it was strategic in that I was working harder. I'd set the attention. I'd been smart about how I was going about it, but I wasn't necessarily smart about the prioritization of my time. And the same ways that got me that success there at that level certainly weren't going to be the ways that would get me successful.
Because now you've got, it's people, isn't it? It's teams.
Yeah, totally different. Totally different skill sets. So
kudos to you. So then you obviously do it in a year, which is very ambitious, and we can talk about that all day. But then the next level is then you now want to become a people manager. So you run teams. Any specific area that you focus on in terms of your people management?
So I would say that was year 8. The next 6 or so years were people management and then managing managers later. So first it was in sales, so exactly what I was doing, but now I was managing the same group. And we killed it. A ton of the people that were on that team then became top 1% sellers, which was nuts.
Wow.
And we were killing it, making so much money. And then I actually got the opportunity to take on a rotational role that had just been created. And so again, comes that risk where somehow God's like, you want to do the stuff that's comfortable or you want to take a risk? And yeah, I took a chance. No one's ever done it before. No one could give me guidance on it. But
So what does that look like, rotational role? Is that every 6 months, 9 months?
So it was a 12-month rotation to be I would call it like an apprentice for the second in command to the CEO. So it was for our brand new sales and marketing officer for the company. She came from outside. The first time the company had ever hired A, sales and marketing officer, and B, hired a sales leader from outside of the company. They'd all been promoted from within. And so in her previous roles, she did something like this where each C-suite executive would have an apprentice, follow them around, give them a vantage point of the company from a different altitude, but also be able to bring their smarts to helping the leadership team make particular decisions. And so I did that for a year, learned so much, still learning from that. I'm realizing now things that she was trying to teach me, that experiences that I had that I learned from, but also got to lead some pretty cool strategic projects while being part of that teeny baby team. I didn't have wasn't like I had some large organization. So it wasn't about leading people at that time. It was more providing value, influencing, and then learning a ton in that experience. After that, I did a 6-month rotation building our growth strategy for Africa.
Right.
And then after that, led revenue functions for a small acquisition we had. It was maybe a $300 million business, like 2,500 people. And that got acquired by a $13 billion business within the company. So while it wasn't like I had like hundreds of thousands of people reporting to me, there were very different skills and experiences that I learned from each of those
all
rotations.
set you up for the success and your new venture, which is, it's not even new anymore, but your venture, your organization, which will soon be conglomerate.
Yes.
GrowthQ. So tell us. So when and how did you make the decision to leave? Because obviously you're now deep into your career.
Oh yeah.
You've gone you 16 years is a long time, but you've obviously really, really, you pushed the needle.
Yeah.
Did you need a new challenge? What was the thought process?
It's really, really hard to leave good. Really hard.
'Cause that's comfortable money, like bonuses.
Great money.
Flights.
Great relationships. Great company. The company has been rated the #1 place to work in the world.
Wow.
Multiple times in a year. People do boomerang careers to come back to this company. I mean, I went by a first name basis at this company, right? I grew up at this company. I still to this day have great friends that either worked at the company or alumni of the company. So really, really hard. I mean, talk about if you want to do any experience, you want to get into this, great, we've got a job for you over here. And that's the type of, that's the thing I loved about working at the company. But there was a problem I wanted to solve that I couldn't solve it at the company.
Right.
I talked about my last role as leading revenue functions for this $300 million business. We had to take talent from all over the world and migrate that talent into this much larger organization. And talent mobility is hard. Talent mobility is hard. For leaders who care, it's hard. For revenue functions, it can be even harder if you don't have pedigree and don't have a network. I think I shared with you, networking and building my brand and stuff, that came natural to me. There were a lot of people in my organization that it felt very uncomfortable for. People that had spent 20 years grinding, doing great work, that now hadn't fixed up their resume, didn't even know they needed to be building a network of, right? I mean, so it was tough kind of advocating and helping them land roles that their skills could translate. And I thought to myself, this can't just be our problem. Then the pandemic happens. There's the great resignation that's happening, followed by then the great layoffs, right? And so you've got a lot of people who are experiencing the mobility in their careers and trying to figure this out. It's really hard for a lot of people. Close to 2 million people over the last 2.5 to 3 years have been displaced in their jobs, specifically in tech. And so I found that was a real problem. I then did a ton of research in all 3 geos, the Americas, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and then APJC, and found that it wasn't just our company. It was a huge problem.
Right.
I then looked at the data and found that 82.7% of people managers in revenue roles looked like one demographic.
Right.
And even if they were well-intentioned, what tools do they have to be able to find the right skills without going to their immediate networks, who I know, right? Getting in it, the numbers speak for themselves, right? I told you what my numbers were. But getting access, it's hard, right? And so that's a big reason why we built GrowthQ, is to be that talent matching marketplace, to be able to take someone's skills, remove pedigree bias, and match them to the right companies who are looking for their skills where they can be successful. And again, removing pedigree bias.
And it also seems like there is a mirror effect or synergy. You know, the first company where you was interested in the wellness, not just the acquisition, not just that. So it's not just about connecting people, but it's actually also giving the coaching and the tools.
Absolutely.
Because like you said, you could easily just close your eyes and say, just go and work somewhere. But actually, it's the person that's important as well.
Yeah. And their well-being and how happy they are, and where they get to show up and show their skills manifests, right? When that match is right. If you're in a place where the context makes sense, your unique skills are valued at that place, they've been looking for you and they wanted you, that's where you succeed. I think I mentioned the year that I made the top 1% and made really good money that year. What I didn't mention is who my customers were. So I think I told you I spent I'd spent 7 years dancing in the NFL and NBA. Well, guess who my customers were? The NFL, the NBA, all the sports leagues, as well as technology companies that supported what they did.
That must have been cool.
I mean, think about that. Nobody could speak the language of my clients better than I could. It made it to where it was, yes, I worked really hard, but I could amplify that so much more because I knew that unique language, right?
Because like if you went to, what's it called, automotive.
Right. I mean, sure, I could get into it because I know what it's like to drive a car, but I wouldn't be able to speak that language than if, let's say, I'd worked on the floor of Toyota.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Imagine them coming and then selling to them. They know their deep problems. They know where the bodies are buried. And that match really made such a difference for me, right? The hiring manager found me because he was like, oh, she would be perfect for this. Yeah. But he knew how to get to me, right? Imagine that nursing professional that's been 30 years nursing. She's burnt out right now from the pandemic and wants to do something different. Imagine her going and being a sales rep at Epic, which is a You think if they're a software company that helps with the experience in the hospital room, right? She knows where she knows exactly how technology is going to help the nurse and the patient.
Yeah.
She would work wonders there, right? But she doesn't have a network where that
confidence.
epic sales manager is looking for her, right? And that's exactly why we created GrowthQ.
She doesn't have the confidence to
Yeah.
even make the decision.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can make the transition.
Yeah, but then where do I go then? How do I get a mentor? What do I need to learn to get ready? What struggles am I going to have? How is it going to be? How do I translate my skills from what I'm doing in the hospital room to how that makes sense in this technology, right? And that's really where GrowthQ helps support that individual so they can make that transition.
Superb. I'm excited.
I am too.
So, what can we expect next from you? Other than, I'm sure there'll probably be a movie, probably a couple of books, probably be more, wonderful interviews on CNBC, NBC, CNN, Bloomberg. We're sure. So,
yes,
but for GrowthQ, what's next for us? What can we expect to see from you guys?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for us right now is getting to 1 million people that can say they have found that right career for them through GrowthQ. Brilliant. That is incredibly important milestone for us. And look, I think even outside of just GrowthQ itself, the more that the areas of my life can continue to be intentionally congruent and connect more dots for people, as well as continue to grant me the freedom to work on the things that I'm really passionate about, that to me is gold. So
excellent. Forward.